Hey guys, you might be wondering why am I wearing my 15-year-old shirt? This must be important. It is. I want to talk about motion in this video. A couple of things that you see a lot of the time that are probably actually incorrect, yet you see them often and you see like very happy customers even though what's happening is often incorrect. Because it is very immersive and before you know it you feel your brain decides it's real even though it isn't. I will look at some of the often made mistakes and also hopefully look at a few ways it could be improved. So this is not just going to be bashing, it will be to some extent, both in what happens and also how people talk that like so it is correct, and look at the reasons why and perhaps the way things could be improved. So assisting me in this venture is this. So I will speak the truth and I will be very intelligent in this video. Let's look at a couple of clips that I found on YouTube. So let's play this frame by frame. He's gonna hit the brakes really hard and you see the thing is pitching forward, nose goes down, but you also see that he gets a little kick in the back of his head almost, right? It's not huge, but it doesn't purely pitch forward, it also moves his head to the back of the seat. And that's equal to accelerating out of a corner rather than braking. So that's an inverted G-force really. And when it ends up dangling like that, yeah, perhaps there is a correct orientation for the G-force. You're being sort of hanging down as if you're braking. But this angle, it doesn't really help a lot. You know, the G-forces you get from a 20-degree lean 0.1 G or something, it's really not significant, whereas that initial push that you get can be noticeable. You can give nice little kicks with a motion system, but a lot of the time they are inverted. So this is one example of that. The motion is mostly just like being hit in the back, being punted in the back, which we've all experienced. So that's incorrect, inverted really. So then I saw this super excited guy, which is one of the positives about motion and VR. It's definitely exciting. He's also going to press the brake. So see now he is also pitching forward like that, but his head is also moving up. So that's equal to going through like a dipper. We cannot see what he's doing at the moment where he's driving, so I don't know for sure if it's what he's doing, but probably he's just braking. But the way the motion system works here, he also gets like his head compressed into his shoulders a little bit, even though he's probably just braking. And he has that inverted nudge a little bit as well. And then finally, while the thing wobbles around, he does hang with ever so small G-forces. But the initial kick is inverted and strange and introduces something that you don't want to feel, like your head going down into your shoulders. So that's very strange as well. But he's definitely very excited about it. You see here is another thing, it's not just an issue when braking and accelerating, it's also when cornering. So look, he's turning right. And that always makes these systems a lot of the time, they sort of lean with the suspension of the car. So it leans to the left, right? So he turns right and the thing leans to the left. And you can already see what happens. His head has inertia and wants to remain where it is. So his head is sort of moving to the right of the seat. And you know that corresponds with a left turn, not a right turn. So that inverted force nudges that you get is not just for braking and acceleration. It's a lot of the time equally incorrect and inverted with cornering as well. Same applies. Once you are, he seems to be really excited. Once you're hanging there, you do feel a little correct side force. Now he's turning right and he's sort of falling to the left. That's correct. But when getting there, when his face goes from this position to that position, when it's accelerated in that way, it's incorrect. It's for a left-hand turn. So again, completely incorrect motion here. But his excitement is shows he doesn't mind. Here is another expensive thing, and here you see it sort of be quite laggy, and this doesn't go for all systems, but lag can be quite interesting. So let's play this for a couple seconds.
It starts moving you about a little
That felt laggy to me.
bit.
Oh, he's king of understeer, but that's not what we're looking at. However, this system, look what happens when he brakes.
When they bounce back directly, very tactile, and also easy to reach as well.
Oh, did you see that? This is proper. Here the nudge is the right way. So the seat is the thing is pulled back when you brake, and that creates the proper nudge, like you're actually hitting the brake pedal. There is no sustain G at all. This thing doesn't seem to lean much, if at all. But that initial nudge is the correct direction. There he goes. You can really see it very well that it's a pretty quick nudge, and the inertia of his head means that it wants to stay where it is. And this is exactly what you would expect when you hit the brakes. Your head moves forward like that. But you can only reach that by pulling the seat and everything back. So this is a good example, or at least I still don't want to say you should have motion. If you're going to get motion, you probably don't want to pitch and roll the thing. You want to pull it back on the brakes. That's probably a good idea. And this is a good example, finally. So here we have wheel, and here we have another issue.
Okay, let's do it once more. Yeah, it did. Yeah, okay, so it's never going to go...
So here you see the thing yaw, rotate a lot. And we have another issue with where is your head when this happens. If your head is right in the middle and the front and the rear would move like that, then you would only feel yaw. When your head is more towards the rear, you would not only feel yaw, you would also feel side forces. And it's really important. We saw that these are often inverted. So you get some rotation, but you also get side forces, and you don't want them to be inverted. So a slider system like this, it really depends on where your face is, depending on where the motion is. And I doubt you enter this as parameters. It also creates an issue that we see a couple of things in this little clip. So you see, I'm not just picking on one YouTuber, I'm picking on all of them just to make sure everybody hates me. Quality content. So he's gonna turn right, I think. Let's see. Yeah. So you can definitely see.
Before, it's like 0 to 100 in 2 seconds flat or something ridiculous.
What are some of the issues we have here? First of all, he is turning right. That means you want to be pushed in the left of your seat. But you see the platform is moving in a way that you would be pushed to the right of the seat. So that's an incorrect, inverted lateral G-force cue. Another issue that I really think is fairly important. You see the thing moves and yaws, but the image does not move. Now, if you go to Formula 1 simulators or really advanced, expensive simulators with motion, they always make sure that the image that is seen to the driver changes when the motion platform moves or turns or rotates, whatever it does. It will make sure that the image you see is correct. And here the image is static. And he's moving, you know, this is not a little bit, he's moving a lot. So this is really weird because you get certain inverted sensations by getting thrown to the right of the seat when you're turning a right-hand turn, which is inverted. You know, this does get confusing, but it is weird and inverted. You also see a really strange image because now you're sort of moved relatively to the image, which is just really weird and confusing. So doesn't make sense to me. It has no realism at all, but it is very immersive and cool. I don't want to take that away from the experience, but it is just demonstrative. Let me fix that. Demonstrative. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I still don't know how to speak English. It's not quite right. Immersive, yes, but we turn to the right and we get pushed in the right of the seat instead of the left, and the image doesn't update based on the view changes. Now this is quite complicated, of course, and things like rFactor Pro, I'm sure they have all sorts of systems available, because when you move as well, you don't want the view to be constant. So even when you just move forward and back, which we saw properly here, here it's not too bad because the monitors is mounted to the motion rig. That's a very important thing as well. So that's pretty decent. So here's another example. I'm going to play it and you can actually see watch's head relatively to the seat. Now, so what happens here? He's turning left and you see his head is actually sort of staying in the left of the seat, which is equal to turning right. This is a good example. I'll just play it again.
But just the side-to-side move.
You can see the inverted nature there. However, to give Will some points.
But it really does give you that sense of initial G-force, at least anyway. I mean, it's not really sustained G-force because it can't keep moving infinitely, but...
So yeah, that's very well put. You only feel initial force there, sadly inverted. And you cannot really sustain it. So that's a smart thing to say, that's true. Another kind of popular system is D-Box. I've used this a little bit as well. And here you can also very easily see that the motion platform seems to follow the lean or the suspension movement of the car. So it leans forward when braking, leans to the left when turning right, leans to the right when turning left, and leans back when accelerating.
On that car.
Leans to the right a little bit, left hand turn. Other way, leans to the left in a right hand turn. Left. See if he hits the brakes. Doesn't do a lot on the braking. But you can kind of see, yeah, now it leans forward a little bit. It seems to follow just the roll and pitch of the car. That's a very common thing to do. So now that I've picked on every YouTuber, how do I redeem myself? Well, one of the problems is let's make myself bigger. So one important thing as we get out the Lego with all this is the motion center. So a lot of the time, if you have 4 corner transducers on your sim, the motion center will be sort of in the middle of the wheelbase here. So what happens when you go over bumps is something like this. So if you brake, what happens is this. And if you look at the headrest, imagine a guy there, he gets moved up a little and he moves forward a little. So you see that if his head is now here, when we brake, his head was here and is now here. So you get that acceleration. So that's a typical motion center for most of these motion systems have a motion center somewhere there. And with that very excited example, it seemed to be that the motion system sort of pivoted from the front. So if you pivot it from the front and you start to brake, you will get that. And that gives you more like that your head going into your shoulders force and a little bit of forward force as well. Now what if you pivot from the back? That's actually not quite as bad. So when you brake, goes down, well, you still get the headrest to move forward, so that's bad. So where do you want to base your motions from? Well, ideally right from the center of your face, really. So if you do that, and how do I do that? You brake, you get something like that. But you can see that means I have to do really weird things with the car, moving it back, forward and everything, just to make sure that the center of motion doesn't move around like that, but is nice and so you get a bit something like this is what your motion should be in order for you to feel those lean angles properly and in order for you to not get incorrect motion cues. Well, you can already see There's no humanly affordable motion system around that can do that. So the other option, which we saw with the one system, where you brake and it pulls you back, that's great, because your head wants to stay here. You brake the car, you move it back, you get that sensation. So that's a very good way of doing it. And for left and right turns as well, you want to do it in a way, just move it a little bit perhaps, but in a way that if you turn right, you want to move it to the right as well. So you are pushed to the left of the seat, yeah. That's what it is. So it's a little confusing talking about this, but it's important to understand that a lot of the time the motion is inverted. So how do you do it correctly then? Well, I talked about the motion center. If you can somehow put the center of motion so your head does not really experience any displacement, it only rotates, then the lean angle g-forces are correct. Or you want to move inverted to what you're doing. So when you're accelerating, you actually want to move the platform forward so your head gets pushed back. If you're braking, you want to pull it back. That's one of the things you can do. What tends to happen if you have a big enough motion system, and I have worked with expensive motion systems in the past, what you tend to do, if you have the available motion, pull it back and lift it up. So looking at braking, instead of leaning it forward, no, you want to pull it back, yes. But if you can combine pulling it back with lifting it up, you get that initial surge that your head is going forward, and then it arrives at a lean angle where you're sort of just dangling in the belt. So that will be a correct way to do that. But the movement that you need in order to rotate around your head and move back and pitch up, it becomes impossible to achieve really. So does that help us? I thought you said us, are going to be constructive here as well. Well, let's think about ways we can improve it, or other ways to approach motion in ways that are less incorrect. So how can it be improved? Well, I've shown you that pretty much for any sort of consumer level system, anytime you roll or pitch, so you change the angle of the system, you get inverted cues. And that's one of the biggest downsides. So probably it is unrealistic to desire any sort of rotation, whether that's forward, backwards, or left and right. That just gives incorrect cues because we cannot get that motion center to be right in our face. That would create some weird system. So that's one thing to do. If you move it left, right, front and rear, make sure that when you brake, you pull the system back. When you accelerate, you push it forward. When you turn right, you move it to the right. And when you turn left, you move it to the left. So you get thrown into the seat in the way you would expect that corresponds with the turn. So rotation, very, very dangerous. You cannot compensate properly. Let a motion in the way I just described. That could possibly work. For most systems though that cannot move, do not attempt G-force simulation and do not copy suspension position. That might appear logical, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So what you could do, possibly, if you have one of those 4 actuator systems, which is technically overdefined, any sort of physics person would say that's overdefined. So a free actuators would probably be, whatever. If you cannot move, and you can only move vertically and rotate, avoid the rotation. What I would do, instead of looking at G-forces or at suspension position, try something else. Try, for example, suspension acceleration. The reason that might work, because when you are in steady state cornering, normally these systems will lean, and that means in order to get there you got that inverted motion kick. That's very confusing. Going by acceleration, at least when you're in steady state, it is level again instead of being angled. I don't know if it'll work, but you have to experiment with something other than G-forces and something other than lean angles with suspension angles and that sort of stuff. What I am a big fan of actually, so I've been really quite negative because I think, there is some ground to be negative here, be critical about the motion systems. Vertical G-force amazing. You really want that, that's cool. It doesn't try to give you cornering, braking, limit information, but bumps and elevation changes. That sort of stuff is really cool. I've had a lot of success when we had a big motion system to play with one of my previous jobs. Angles where we could even compensate for the head position, but then we had so little space left to move that in the end we just pulled the thing back when braking and did the little nudges. But vertically it had quite a lot of motion, and when going over a crest you would feel that. That was pretty cool. So no cornering, no braking information if your system cannot move. If it, if significantly, if it can just move vertically, then only do vertical G-forces. And a thing that's cool and probably immersive, and there's nothing wrong with it because it doesn't try to give you information about where the car is, like shifts. Perhaps add a canned little jolt like that when shifting up and down. That can be cool. You might do that based on the G-force or something, sure, but only then. Don't avoid the G-forces when driving, but you can probably add like a little canned fake effect of shifts. And if you manage to do that with the G-forces, it might actually be somewhat proportional, and a smooth shift will feel less jerky than a hard shift. So there I would probably fake it a little bit or use G-forces, but then turn that off instantly. You don't want to have the G-forces in cornering make the thing lean in incorrect direction. So be creative there with what you can feel, vertical bumps and certain crashes and stuff. Make that immersive, but do not try G-force feedback if the whole platform cannot move front and back. Do not have a platform that moves front and back or rotates without the screens rotating with it. That's really incorrect. But other things that are probably more sensible. You see, my point is, in order for motion to help you, it has to be very consistent. If corner entry of one turn feels different than the next lap you're going to do it because the motion system is doing some stuff and it's run out of room to move. If the feedback is inconsistent, it will not help you. The beauty of force feedback, for example, is it can be sustained for as long as you're in a corner. You can get that force feedback for a minute. But motion, when you have you're going in a circle, once you enter that circle, you might get a little kick, sure, but then there's nothing left. So it will be very inconsistent because it can only do a little nudge and then you get nothing. It's weird. Whereas you're still getting G-forces because you're still turning, but you don't feel that anymore. I think that's just an alley you should not even desire to walk in because it's inconsistent and that's confusing. Force feedback isn't inconsistent like that. Another thing that would be really nice, and they exist, seatbelt tensioners. A proper system could really, compress your ribs, strangle you proportional to G-forces for as long as the G-forces occur. So that would be really nice to have a proper belt tensioning system that has to, be clever and look at the preload on. It's not going to be an easy product to make, but a good belt tensioner would really work, and it will give you consistent feedback for no matter how long you're on the brakes. That would be really cool. There are G-suits. I think Cranfield has something like that where they blow up like pockets of air that force you into the seat. You can also sustain that. Pretty complicated again. It's not an easy thing to do, but anything that's sustainable, then you want, in my opinion, you want to do G-force simulation. If you can just nudge, then be very careful and probably don't want to go down that alley. So I hope that perhaps if somebody like D-Box sees this, I don't know, and they might not care. There's a whole entertainment industry, and you see all the people using these systems are really excited and having a lot of fun, and it's fine, but now we're being nerdy physics, realism please, we see some issues with it. But perhaps you can add some stuff to your software that takes out the G-forces or the suspension movements and do a few more tricks with the telemetry to make the platform more steady state. Still do something, but not roll and pitch. Or give options to invert the pitch and roll. I think might already exist. Might give a bit better results. Otherwise though, all these home systems, they do not compensate for the motion of your center of your head. they're really not adding to the realism, they're adding to the immersion. And you might have 10 times the fun, you're not getting consistent and good simulation information. And that's my gripe with it. So have fun, great, nothing against that. And whatever you enjoy, it's your hobby, that's cool. I'm just taking the very nerdy physics guy look at motion, and there are some flaws in it. But I hope to have at least highlighted a couple of things you might be able to do to improve it. Move laterally, invert rotations, and perhaps the software of these motion systems can be improved in the future to give you more options, to give you like that immersion without the incorrectness. So who knows? And another fun story-ish is that a while ago I got an email, people making like a traction loss yaw system asked me, how do we get understeer and oversteer from telemetry? Which is a really good question, because if you want to have that thing do something with under and oversteer, you have to first realize, how do I calculate the amount of under and oversteer? And I replied back, well, how are you going to move that platform logically, even if you can calculate under or oversteer properly? You know, where's the head? Do you get side forces? Do you get yaw? It has very limited motion range. There is just no way you can do it properly, in my opinion. So avoid any sort of driving on the limit cues and just go for like the vertical feedback and curbs and shifts and stuff like that. That can be really cool. And I don't think you should need any more, you shouldn't want any more from a home system. And to be fair, even the really advanced professional simulators, still, they cannot really do a lot of sustained G-forces, and effectively it's a very, very expensive way to nudge the drivers back and forth a little bit. And these are a lot more advanced, and they correct for a lot more things that the home systems do. So they're a lot less wrong, but I even doubt their usefulness in like F1 simulation or something. My theory is a little bit that perhaps racing simulation is a bit behind like aviation sims, and if you're getting your Cessna license, you're not pulling G's and it's all pretty slow. So a platform that just slowly adopts the pitch and the roll of your aircraft might feel pretty good, you know, but racing is so violent, the G-forces are so high and so sudden, motion is just not gonna work. And you know, the perfect motion system would be like an XY, like the platform can move back and forth. And you know what you get when you run the numbers on that? The size of that motion platform has to be exactly the size of the racing circuit you're driving on, because then you're doing it for real. You're getting all the G-forces by actually moving the thing, which is impossible, of course. So these are just some thoughts of me taking the sim approach to motion. I don't mean to discredit anybody who's having fun with whatever system you have. That's fine. Don't want to be bashing on Aussie Stig or Will here, just accidental. So that's nothing personal. Yeah, perhaps that was somewhat informative to you. I felt like making this video after seeing more inverted motion with very high price tags, and I just got a bit must complain on YouTube. So with a few pointers, hopefully, to how it might be improved. If you enjoyed this video, then thanks. If not, of course, you can comment down below, and I will never claim to be 100% correct. Although this time... See you later, guys.